Yesterday, my wife and I took the kids to the lake to have a little outing. We took out the paddle boards and their kayaks and just paddled around the lake a little bit. It's funny because I spent a bunch of time trying to get a little bit of B roll, and I was like, I'm going to make a video while I'm out there. And then I started recording something, and the audio wasn't good now that I looked at the footage. But all in all, I had a little bit of time to reflect afterwards, and I thought about like what should I be talking about in my next video. And I'm trying to share more stuff, more personal stuff, more of my struggles and my accomplishments, thinking about where I came from and how far I've come in my life and all the things that I've overcome. I really have a hard time believing it sometimes. When so much time passes, you don't realize those things and you kind of become a different person and you forget about your past. And every once in a while it comes up or you might think about it a little bit. And I wanted to share some of that for anyone who might be struggling right now, who feels that they're on a bad path or they've had a rough life and can't overcome some of the stuff that they want to, or they think that they're never going to get to where they want to be. Because while I was out on the lake with my family and just playing with my kids and having a nice day, doing stuff that I never imagined that I would be doing, reflecting on what my life was like when I was younger. And I started thinking about like when I moved to Vegas, and at that time I was just about to turn 18. I had already been arrested 4 times as a juvenile. I had drug charges, I had Grand Theft Auto charges, assault and battery charges, I had disorderly conduct charges, and I had been a pretty shit kid up to that point. And when we moved to Vegas, I struggled with leaving Miami and I struggled with leaving my friends and not really wanting to part ways with that life of mine. It's hard when you're a kid because I do think that 18-year-olds are still kids. And it's hard when you're young to kind of get stripped away from the life that you're used to. And even though it was for the best at that time, I didn't want to be in Vegas. And it was honestly the best thing that could have happened for me. And I think my mom knew that at the time. And even though her and I have not the best relationship, I do think that her intentions were really good when she did that. And I think that it honestly was probably one of the best things that could have ever happened for me. But I didn't just flip a switch as soon as I got to Vegas. And I didn't just get my life together right away. That actually didn't happen for years after. And I was thinking about this stuff because I was reflecting on like, man, all the crazy stuff I did when I was younger and how much trouble I got into and how things could have still continued to go poorly for me had I just gotten caught doing some of the stuff I was doing when I was in Vegas. And I thought about when I got to Vegas and my mom and I had an apartment, and my mom had just enough money to get us to Vegas and to rent an apartment for 3 months, and that's all we had. We didn't have any more runway after that, and it was not a lot of money. Looking back now, it was a few $1,000s that my mom had scrounged together and saved up in order for us to make this move and try to have a better life. And when that 3 months was up, we didn't have anything going for us. My mom had just started working, and like I said, I didn't want to be there. So I wasn't trying to get a job. I wasn't trying to do anything with my life, and I was just stuck in the same rut. And at that point in time, I think I had just turned 18 because I was 17 on the way to Vegas, and I was really close to turning 18 once I got there. I started hanging out with people who were still not great people and people who were still kind of involved in a lot of stupid stuff and still dealing with my addictions, and I was still drinking and doing drugs. And I started to think about like when my mom and I ended up losing that apartment and we slept in our car a few nights, and I had made a few friends with some people that were able to help us out and let us sleep on their floor in their living room. And then eventually we found someone else who let us like rent a room from them for a while. It was actually, I don't know, like 3 to 6 months. At this point in time, that was when I like started smoking meth and I started doing dumb shit. I remember I was friends with a guy named Bugs or Bugsy, and he was a Sureño gangbanger from LA. He was like 30 years old, and me and him were hanging out a lot. And it's just so dumb now when I like look back and think about it, but I realized just like how my priorities were just shit. They were garbage. I had no ambition. I had no desire to do anything with my life. And me and Bugs would just hang out because he didn't have a job, and we would chill in his trailer in the trailer park and get high and drink and rap. He wanted to be a rapper, and I was just 18 years old. I was a dumb kid, still doing dumb stuff. And it took me so long to get my life together. And I think about like one time when me and Bugs were hanging out, and this is something that I was like laying in bed last night just thinking about after reflecting on my day with my kids at the lake. And we were chilling at his trailer the whole day, drinking and drinking and drinking. And we didn't have any extra drugs, right? We had smoked all of our weed and it was getting late at night. And we got the itch to go and try to buy some crack in Naked City in Vegas at 2 in the morning. And I was drunk. I had my mom's car, the same car that she had from Miami. It was an old Ford Taurus that we drove to Vegas in. And me and Bugs at 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning decide to go for a drive and see if we can find someone that would sell us some drugs in Naked City in Vegas. And Naked City in Vegas is this area behind the Stratosphere Hotel, which was just known for like where a lot of like hookers and strippers and drug dealers and whatnot lived and hung out. And that was just like a good place to go if you were looking for some stuff. And I remember there was a 24-hour pawn shop that was open right around there that had like a walk-up window. And I forgot exactly what I tried to pawn, and it got us a few dollars. And we went and we found what we were looking for, and then we went back and got high and spent the whole night just up and trying to rap and doing just dumb shit, just dumb stuff. And thinking about that and like where I'm at now, and now I'm just a suburban dad, and I'm living this life that's very interesting, and how I changed my life so much. Like, how was a guy like that ever going to become a software developer? How is a guy like that ever going to travel the world and do things like go to Europe and go to Asia and have adventures with his kids on a Wednesday at the lake? I guess I just wanted to share this because I'm trying to document more of this stuff. I think about like, if I was to be hit by a bus tomorrow, what do I leave behind as far as like a memoir, a journal, a diary, whatever you want to call it? What would my kids know of me, and what would they think of me? And I'm glad that my kids don't know me for that person. I'm glad that I was able to change and do so much, but it took a long time. Bugs was the same guy that got me a job with him working a graveyard shift at the MGM Grand nursery or daycare that they had there. And at night we would go in and we would both get paid $50. We worked for some Korean guy who owned a cleaning company, and we would just get $50 under the table, no paycheck. And we would just clean the daycare. We would scrub the toilets. I remember scrubbing little tiny toilets. Think about like how much of a struggle my life was for a while after that. Like, I think about like how it was to make minimum wage or not have money, how it was to have to catch the bus because I had no other option, or not be able to go do stuff because I couldn't even afford gas to move my car. Even though I was doing all that stupid stuff, eventually I got into more stupid stuff. And after we ended up getting our own place, my mom and I ended up being able to rent a weekly apartment. And if you don't know what weekly apartments are, they're basically where people who don't have credit or people who don't have a job pay upfront, $200 a week. At the time, I think it was like $200. This was like 20 years ago. Crazy how old I am now. But we ended up getting our own place, and we ended up renting a weekly. And I got a job at the mall working at Champs. I was working at Wet n Wild, and I was working minimum wage jobs, but we were able to kind of get by. And I still ended up doing stupid stuff. I still ended up kind of gravitating towards the people I was used to hanging out with. I didn't see any other option for my circle of friends. And when you kind of are a certain type of person, you attract those kind of people. And it's hard to explain. I don't really know how to put it, but it goes back to that. You are a product of the five people you hang out with. And when you don't see yourself as someone who can live a different life, or as someone who just is who they are, you kind of end up hanging out with people who are just like you. It just happens. You're a product of your environment. I truly believe that. And I think that that's why people who live in poverty and people who live in the hood and people who live shitty lives end up being stuck that way, even if they don't really want to, because they don't see a way out. They don't know another way of life, and they don't understand that, like, the people they hang out with directly impact that, and the place that they're in kind of directly impacts that, because your ceiling is really low and your goals and ambitions aren't really even there, because you don't see people around you that are able to succeed, because most of the people that do succeed who are around you probably do it either through talent, if they're like good enough to be a musician or an athlete, and the other people end up finding ways to be successful from the people that they see around them that are successful, like drug dealers and pimps. And I grew up around that. I know I don't look it, but I did. And even though I kind of stopped hanging out with bugs so much, and my mom and I ended up getting that weekly apartment, I found more friends that ended up being kind of shitty people. I was hanging out at a trap house. I was hanging out with people who sold drugs. I was hanging out with people who sold and bought stolen goods. And I was doing a lot of the stuff that those people were doing. And eventually, I don't know what it was. I really, really don't know what it was at that time. Something flipped. A switch in my head flipped. And at this point, I was getting like into my early 20s. I think I was not even 21 yet. I might have been 20 years old, or just about to turn 20. And I kind of had an epiphany. I had a moment of clarity. And I thought to myself, like, why am I doing this? Why am I living this kind of life? Why do I have these kind of friends? Why do I want nothing from my life? And I started to change, and it was gradual. It didn't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, and it takes so much work. And depending on where you start, if you start at the bottom, to crawl out of that is so fucking hard. Like, it's so hard that if you don't know, you just don't know how hard it is. And everybody has disadvantages and advantages. And I'm sure that I played my advantages as much as I could, but they were small and limited. But I did what I had to do. And the big advantage I had, which was strange because of how I came up, I I really only had a work ethic. That's like my biggest edge that I think I had. I had a few other things, right? Like, I was bilingual, so I could speak Spanish, and that maybe helped me because a lot of my jobs kind of was a bonus that I spoke Spanish. I remember the job I got at the mall. It was in kind of a Spanish neighborhood, and when I told on my application that I spoke Spanish, that was like a huge selling point. And I'm digressing, but just saying, like, you have to try to use whatever you can to your advantage. And a big one for me was my work ethic. And at this point in time, I felt like I was tired of not having anything. So the only thing I knew how to do at that point was work. Because funny enough, even though I've been a complete piece of shit my whole life, I have always kind of had a job because I always wanted money. And I was always doing little things on the side to hustle and make extra money. But I kind of always been able to have a job. And my mom got me working when I was really young. She got me some of my first early work as like a busboy and a waiter and a food runner and stuff like that, because that's the industry that she worked in when I was in Miami. So I had been working since I was like I actually was working since I was really young, because I remember washing cars in Miami when I was super young and not legally allowed to work. But as soon as I was legally allowed to work, my mom got me working. And I think that that's something that really, really helped me, because when I started trying to crawl my way out of stuff and to change my life, the first thing I thought was just like, I'm just going to work. I'm going to work as much as I can. And at this point in time, I was a food runner in Vegas. And it's funny because I've talked about this, but I talked about this in a way to just kind of give people an idea of what my previous jobs were. And for people who wanted to become software developers, to give them an idea of like me not having any experience in tech. But again, I'm digressing. I don't mean to, but I want this to be a little more off the cuff and just kind of talking stuff out because I think that it's beneficial for people. And I'm hanging out at the trap house and I have a job that I'm working and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to get another job. I'm going to try my best to really see if I can just work two jobs and try to save up some money and maybe get a car and like get my life together, right? And at that point in time, my mindset was still like around like getting clothes and shoes and a car because I'm 19, 20 years old. I just want to get laid and not feel poor. So what I end up doing is I get a second job and then now I'm working 5 a.m. to 1 at my food runner job that I got. And then I'm working at 3 to like 11. And I did that for months. I remember like I worked a lot of 16-hour days and working two jobs. I would go to one job and then my apartment was kind of far away. So instead of going to my apartment, I would go to my friend's house and take a nap on his couch and then steam my shirt that was in my backpack and like, have it look good for my second job, which was a busboy at a restaurant that I got at the first hotel that I worked at in Vegas, or actually it would have been the second hotel because I was food running at the Riviera at that time. It was a long time ago. I was working really, really, really hard. And this is kind of like the trap that you fall into when you grow up somewhere where you see people make easy money and then you try to be the sucker who gets the job and feel like you're like, why am I working so hard to make minimum wage when I see my friends who are selling drugs or selling stolen shit or doing illegal stuff like credit card fraud and other things like that to make money, and I'm over here like a chump working a job for $10 an hour and thinking that that's good money. But now I reflect on that. I think about like how good that was for me because one, it helped me get away from the lifestyle and the people that I was living around and hanging out with all the time. And then two, like all of those people that were my friends back then, like pretty much all of them are like done, like they're like in jail or just like, I hate to use the word losers because it's a harsh word to say, but I would say that many of them are just not where I'm at, financially and stability wise. And it's it's interesting because you think so short term when you're 20 years old and you think that like, man, this job is stupid. I'm going to do this forever. But if you start to separate yourself from the things that you know that are bad and you start trying to work towards things that are good, like having a job and saving money and trying to just be better, that keeps rolling over into other stuff. And as long as you're still trying to continue to improve your life, trying to continue to make steps in the right direction and keep trying to elevate your ceiling and trying to elevate yourself, that you eventually do get to a better spot. And then you eventually do start accomplishing some of the things that you wanted to set out to do originally, and to think like how I thought working two jobs was going to fix my life. It didn't, right? Like that only improved my life a tiny bit, but that work ethic paid off. And then the second job that I had really liked me, and they liked me so much that they wanted to give me a better position that paid better. And I would get a percentage of the gratuity that was for the banquet porters. And I moved into a banquet porter position, and then I could actually work less time. I gave up my other job. I actually gave up the other job because I failed the drug test, but I don't, I don't want to talk about that. But it ended up working out for me because the second job that I had, that busboy job, like that restaurant wasn't doing well. And there was other opportunities, and the manager liked me so much because he saw me coming in and he knew that I was working a second job and he really wanted to keep me around. And he was just like, look, man, like if I can give you something that makes you work less and gives you an opportunity to like, hustle and make some more money, like, would you like to do that? And it kind of like paid off. And then the next thing paid off because after I was at that hotel for a while, I made friends with other people in other departments and they liked my work ethic and they ended up helping me. And that's how I ended up getting my first valet job, which was like the best tipping job that I ever had at that point. And I started making really good money and like my life started to change and I started to become more distant with the people that I used to know. And I started to make new friends and I started to make a new circle. And the five people that I hung out with the most started to become better people. And I kind of continued to do that. And it's funny now because I don't really hang out with a lot of people and I'm more, my circle is tight, but I'm a family man and I have a wife and kids. And it's harder when you get older to kind of have a lot of friends and that stuff changes. But reflecting on all that now and thinking about like, man, I went from like smoking meth at 3 in the morning with my Mexican gangbanger homeboy Bugs driving around in my mom's Taurus to going to Europe and being in Portugal and Spain and the UK and going to Asia and seeing Angkor Wat like 1,000, 2,000 year old structures and exploring castles and just having like some amazing adventures like swimming with sea turtles and just having such a good life. Some of this might be survivorship bias. Like I get that it might feel to me like anything's accomplishable because I've accomplished so much coming from so little. But I really do think that, the results looking back have taken a very long time. I've been impatient many times throughout my life. And I think we all are because we want to see those improvements happen fast. It's like when you start working out and you got to lose some weight, but that first week after the gym, you're looking in the mirror and trying to see the results and you don't see them, but then you keep doing it. And a year later, you meet someone who hasn't seen you in a while and they can't recognize you. And they're just telling you like how good you look because that work that you put in every day ends up resulting in long-term success. And I know that the analogy of working out and whatnot is kind of silly, but it's the one that makes the most sense to kind of give a visual or an idea of like what that could be like in other ways. I guess at the end of the day, I want to share this stuff because, like I said, I want to like look back, and if I leave a memoir of the things that I've done, this is where I want to do that. I want to talk about it here because I feel like sharing this can help other people. And I feel that like I've gone through so much in the last few years and in the last 10 years, I've done so much. I've started a family, I've started a career, I started a YouTube channel. And now in the last year, I've gotten sober and we're traveling again. And I'm doing so many things that I never thought would be possible. And I never thought I would be able to do. And I continue to accomplish things that I set out to do. And I keep struggling through a lot of it, and I keep my head down and I keep working and I keep applying that work ethic and that mindset of like I just want to be better. I want to be better. Maybe I don't know, maybe it's unhealthy, maybe it's that bullshit that you see and that hustle porn that you hear about, but the truth is like if I wasn't doing this, what would I be doing? If I never tried to improve my life, where would I be? And I think about like people I know and how their lives turned out. I've done videos where I talked about my buddy Drew, who got shot by a cop and killed. I talked about my buddy Angel, who's still kind of missing and I don't know where he's at. And those are just a couple examples. Like I know so many people whose lives turned out so bad. And now talking with my buddy who I'm working with on this app, who grew up, in the same neighborhood as me. And he's one of the few people that has also been able to do something with his life. And we chit chat and start talking about like the old days and like the neighborhood and how everything's getting gentrified and how so many people's lives just, didn't turn out like the way our lives did and how we're lucky in a lot of ways. But then, there's some similarities there when you see the work ethic. It takes a lot to become a lawyer. And I know that my friend worked really hard to do that. And it takes a lot to become a software developer, especially self-taught. And it takes a lot to do what I'm doing now. I don't know if this is just something I needed to talk about to kind of put it out there because I'm just, kind of going through it and thinking about like all the decisions I'm making and everything I'm trying to do with my life, and maybe need this motivation for myself to help me keep going now. Some people made some comments about me burning out, and it's funny because I'm not burning out, but there's a lot of stress involved with what I'm trying to do. And I could take the easy route and, keep working the job, but it's just not what I want to do. And I'm not here to say that there's anything bad about that. I think that stability and having a good job and being able to support your family is a great and wonderful thing. And if that's what you want to do, if that's your goals, then by all means do it. But if you want to keep striving to accomplish bigger and bigger things, that's also your right. And that's what I'm trying to do. And through doing that, I think about a lot of different things. And I just think about like where I'm at now and where I want to be. And hopefully, when this is all said and done, I look back in a few years from now, and I'm really happy with the results, because now as I look back from where I came from and where I'm at, I'm pretty happy with the results, but I don't take enough time to appreciate that. And I don't really think about it often. And when I do, I want to share that because I think that it's helpful to others out there who are just kind of probably going through what I went through at one point in time in my life, and other people who are going through the stuff that I'm going through now, who need to realize that like we're on the right track. We just got to, stay focused and do what we got to do to get to where we want to be and be the best version of ourselves, because we deserve it. And we shouldn't put limitations on the things that we want. And we should strive for excellence, and we should try to be the best that we can be, because what's the point of settling for less? With all that said, I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for listening to me talk about my life for the last 20 minutes or so, and I'll see you next time.